Brill and the Dragators by Peggy Downing, illustrated by Anne Feza. Chapter 11. Dark Tunnel. Brill and Segra again pretended to sleep, hoping the guard assigned to watch them would become too tired or bored to stare. Finally, the eyes disappeared and all was quiet. Brill arose and tiptoed to the barred door. Segra followed him, looking back at the window as she walked. They lifted the bar, and Brill pulled the door open. He sucked in his breath in surprise. A small tunnel had been dug through the wall of dirt. "Segra, look!" She reached out and touched the damp dirt wall of the tunnel. "Somebody has dug from the other side." "That's what I heard today," he whispered. "Where do you suppose it goes?" "We'll find out." Brill crouched down and stepped into the tunnel. "Wait!" cried Segra. "Let's arrange our capes so it looks as if we're still asleep." They hurried to the spot where they had been lying. They formed their capes over rocks into person-shaped bundles. Brill glanced at the window and was relieved to see that no eyes were watching. If only they could escape! He wanted to believe the tunnel led to freedom. They slipped into the tunnel and Segra pulled the door closed. Darkness blotted out all sense of direction. Brill swallowed hard. "I'll go first. Hang on to my tunic." "All right." Segra's voice was laced with fright. Brill bent his head to keep it from bumping the dirt ceiling. He stepped cautiously, feeling with his feet and hands. Some parts of the floor were stone. The sensation that he might fall into nothingness at any moment sent chills up his spine. The tunnel was narrow, and his shoulders touched both sides of the tunnel wall. He shivered as the cold and dampness penetrated his clothes. He stopped after each step to fill the sides in case there was a door, but he only felt rough earth. "Do you think another prisoner dug it?" asked Segra. "I have no idea, but I wish it wasn't slanting down. I want to get to the surface." "I hope the guards don't wake up and realize we're gone. They'd come charging down here with their torches." "I wish we had a candle, then we could go faster," Segra cried. "Brill, look ahead, I see a light." Brill blinked. Were his eyes playing tricks on him? He thought he saw a faint glow ahead. He moved faster. The light grew brighter as they came closer to it. Brill whispered, "Be careful, Segra, we don't know what we're coming to." A rock cave at the side of the tunnel held a candle sitting on a flat stone. 3 men were lying sleeping. Shovels and a wheelbarrow stood at one side of the cave. Brill looked down at the men's faces and felt his heart leap into his throat. One of the bearded men reminded him of his father, but it couldn't be. He was dead. The man stirred, then suddenly jumped as he saw the children. "Where did you come from?" he demanded, his hand at the sword in his belt. "Who are you?" countered Brill. The other men awakened, and they too scrambled to their feet. The man who looked like Brill's father barked, "We're in trouble. Our tunnel's been discovered." Segra explained, "We're prisoners. We were trying to get away." One of the men asked, "How did you get the door open?" "Easy. There's an iron bar on our side. We just lifted it off," explained Brill. The first man groaned. "All is lost. The minute they see these children gone, soldiers will be pouring through that door." Brill asked, "What's lost?" "Our plan to overthrow the Emperor." "Hey, we can go back," offered Brill. "Nobody checks on us at night." "Maybe there's still hope. Hurry!" The man picked up the candle and led the way back through the tunnel. It didn't seem so long now that they had a light. The leader asked Brill, "What's your name?" "Brill." "From the village of Grebbing?" "That's right. How did you know where I was from?" His voice choked as he said, You're my son. You've grown so much I didn't recognize you." Brill felt a surge of joy course through his body. "Father! I thought you were dead." One of the other men barked, "Don't stop now. Our whole plan depends on getting the prisoners back before they're missed." Brill's father held his candle high. "Here's the door. You go inside and bar it. In 3 days, we'll be ready to take the castle. Listen for our signal, 3 knocks. Remove the bar and our men will march in to replace the emperor with the rightful king." "We'll be listening," promised Brill. "Please don't open the door before that. Our tunnel must not be discovered before we're ready for our attack." "We won't," agreed Brill. He and Segra slipped back into their cell. Everything was quiet. They returned to lie down on the cold stone floor. Brill whispered, "I didn't get a chance to ask Father how he got away from the Dragators."
"I wonder if they found King Talder's son. Your dad said they'd replace the emperor with the rightful king."
Brill sat up. "I'm too excited to sleep. My father's alive and there will be a new king. It's such great news."
"Don't talk too loud," warned Segra. "I hope all the plans work out. I long to go back to the mountains to see my parents."
"Father and I will both go home. Mother will be so happy to see us." Segra hugged her knees.
"The emperor has many soldiers. I wonder how many men are supporting the revolution. Will they have a chance?"
"They have to win. That's our only way to escape and live." Segra hugged her knees.
"The emperor has so many soldiers. I wonder how many men are supporting the revolution. Will they have a chance?"
"They have to win. That's our only way to escape and live."
"I'm going to sit on the bench. I wonder if I'll ever feel warm again."
She pulled her cape tight around her. Brill sat beside her. "It's going to be hard just sitting here waiting." Finally, they heard the sound of boots in the corridor outside their cell. The guards were changing shifts. They heard a soldier's deep voice. "Good news, fellows. You only have 1 more night in this miserable hole." "How come?" "Executions have been moved to tomorrow. Emperor Maine has some neighboring king visiting him, and he wants to show him an execution." "I'd be glad to get out of here." "I expect the Emperor's proud of his unique execution method. I'd hate to have my bones crunched by a Dragator's teeth." Brill looked at Segra. Her eyes widened in horror. A guard placed their bowls of gruel on the sill of the hatch, but neither made a move to get them. Brill whispered, "Tonight we'll escape. I'm not going to let them kill us now. I found my father and I want to go home with him." Segra shook her head.
"But if we leave, there'll be an alarm. The soldiers will find the tunnel. Your father said they'd be ready in 3 days. We'll ruin everything if we give them away before they're ready."
"You're saying we should just let them throw us to the Dragators?"
"I can't think of what else to do without spoiling the revolution."
"We won't be here to open the door for them. Maybe we should try to find them tonight so that we can tell them."
"Anytime we go into that tunnel, there's a risk the guards will discover it. Can we put the bar on the hook so that just a little pressure from the other side will knock it off?"
He nodded. "If we just barely rested on the right hook, it should fall off easily. But that won't help us." Brill kept thinking about the Dragators. He didn't want to be the last person to be fed to them before Emperor Maine was overthrown. Segra was very quiet. Finally, Brill asked, "What are you thinking?"
"I'm praying."
"For the executions to be postponed?"
"No, for the success of the revolution. If the emperor is replaced by a good ruler, my family can come down from the mountain. People can worship God again without fear."
"But what good is that going to do us if we aren't here?"
"I'll be happy in heaven knowing things are better here."
"But I don't want to go to heaven yet, Segra. We have a way to escape."
"But if we betray the revolution before it even gets started, we'll all be executed."
"If only we could see the future. What will happen if we let them throw us to the Dragators? What will happen if we escape down the tunnel tonight?"
"We don't know, Brill, but you promised your father that you wouldn't open the tunnel door."
"I know." Brill buried his face in his hands. He kept thinking, there must be some way to escape without spoiling the plans to replace the Emperor. He thought until his brain felt fuzzy, but he couldn't think of a way. That evening, a guard brought them a fine meal of steak and a variety of vegetables and fruit. The soldiers sat down beside them on the rough bench as they nibbled at the food. Brill was not hungry. The thought that this was his last dinner on Earth paralyzed his digestive system. The guard said, "It's a shame to see such beautiful children killed, but I can help you escape." Brill felt a sudden surge of hope. Perhaps this man was part of the planned revolution. "How?" He smiled. "Tell me the names of the rebel leaders. They will be thrown to the Dragators instead of you."
"We didn't have anyone helping us,"
answered Segra. "Oh, come now. 2 children like you could never have planned King Talder's escape. Who is the mastermind behind your treachery?" "We don't know any other rebels," declared Brill. But the guard kept questioning them. Finally he said, "I can't waste any more of my valuable time, but tomorrow, as the Dragator's teeth sink into your tender flesh, remember you could have been spared this painful death. If you tell us the names of the rebels, you won't feel your lungs filling with water as the Dragator drags you to his lair." He stood up and walked to the door. Then he turned. "Are you ready to talk?" "We don't know any rebels," repeated Brill. "The Dragators are very hungry," he said with an evil grin. Then he left. Brill began pacing up and down the cell. He had no intention of sleeping on his last night. Finally, the soldier's watchful eyes disappeared. Now was Brill's chance to escape. But was his life important compared to the lives of all the people the Emperor would execute if he remained as ruler? Brill adjusted the bar so it would fall if the door was pressed from the other side. Silently he prayed, "Dear God, I know you can help us because you can do anything. Please find a way to save us from the Dragators." He sat beside Segra. She asked,
"You decided not to escape."
He nodded. "I promised my father not to open that door. I'll keep my promise. But why doesn't God answer my prayers?"
"Maybe he's planned something even better than we can imagine."
"Doesn't look like it." Brill's voice was bitter.
"I know. My father said death wasn't the worst thing that could happen to a person. Separation from God is worse, but no one can separate us from God."
"I believe Jesus died for me, so I'll live forever, but I wish my stomach didn't feel so queasy." Brill took Segra's hand. "I'm glad you're so brave." But he noticed that Segra's palm was sweaty, and he could hear her uneven breathing. She was scared, but she kept talking bravely to help him. In the middle of the next morning, their cell door opened. 8 soldiers escorted the children up the narrow stairs and out a back door of the castle. Bright sunlight stung Brill's eyes, now used to the dungeon's darkness. He breathed deeply of the flower-scented air as the soldiers marched him toward the moat. He kept blinking his eyes, trying to get them used to the brightness. Brill saw the royal family sitting in their elaborate reviewing stand. The drummer began drumming his monotonous beat. Brill shuddered as he saw Dragators swimming toward the bridge. He looked up at the blue sky for the last time. The soldiers pushed the children out on the bridge. Brill reached out to squeeze Segra's hand. She looked at him and smiled a weak smile.
"It'll soon be over,"
she whispered. "God is with us," he answered in a choked voice. A large crowd had gathered on the other side of the moat. The Emperor stood to give his customary remarks. "I, the exalted Emperor of Exitorn, proclaim that all rebels shall die, whether they be men, women, or children." Brill recognized Florette's plaintive voice.
"Please don't kill Segra!"
The Emperor thundered. "This girl has bewitched my daughter. Throw her to the Dragators." Florette screamed as the soldiers lifted Segra up and dropped her over the side of the bridge. Then Brill felt strong arms gripping his upper arms, lifting him up, over, and then he fell. Before he hit the water, a Dragator caught him between the pincers of his large jaws. End of chapter 11.